You can turn your thrift sale finds into this beautiful glass art mirror. Started with this large 25-inch diameter thrift store find. It was $9.99 up at Goodwill. I cleaned it up, I flipped it over, I removed all the screws from the back, and I did that so I could see how the mirror was attached, and I found that the mirror was attached fairly well, and all I needed to do was add a little Lexil to a couple spots that I thought resin might leak through, and then I replaced the backing. Already was distressed somewhat, so I just distressed it a little bit more and just left it as it was. First flower that I'm going to be making for this project is an iris. And what I need is some pieces of very curved glass like this. And if you want curved glass, the smaller the diameter of the vase or bowl or whatever you're using, the more curved the glass will be. So a larger diameter, it will be flatter but have a slight curve. A smaller diameter vase will have more of a rounded curve. And I'm just going to go through this part slow for those of you who don't know how to nip glass, and for those of you who do, just fast forward through this part. So some of the petals need to be really curved just like that. And all I'm doing is going around the perimeter of the top of the vase, ripping off a piece of glass. This one's huge. I didn't need one this big, but you can just nip it into the shape that you want. Usually when you nip a piece of glass along the edge of the perimeter, you end up with a pointy end and a fatter end at the other side. Sometimes the other side ends up pointy also, but most of these for this case are pointy at one end and fatter at the other, and the fatter end I am just shaping into a rounded top because I want petals for the iris. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to go slow and go around the perimeter to make it a rounded top. I am using the Seabell nippers. The Seabell nippers have a blue or teal rubber just past the blade, and it holds the piece of glass in place instead of making it fly. And those are that's the kind of glass I want curved just like that. And see how they are? That's perfect. That's with a smaller diameter vase. Now I'm using a larger diameter vase, and some of the petals on the flower I want straighter, flatter, not as curved, more like this. And if you notice, this glass is super thick. The thicker the glass, the easier it is to shape. And don't pay any attention that it has nip marks all over it and it doesn't look perfectly smooth. Once you tumble it, paint it, and pour resin over it, you won't even notice. And here I am, I nipped a great big piece of glass, and I'm going to shape this into another petal. And again, this is a larger diameter vase, so they will not be as curved. It will be more of a flat glass. And don't be fooled by the teal rubber rings. The glass doesn't fly, but it can. You still need to wear eye protection because there are some shards that come off of it sometime, and you really need to protect yourself. And see how that is? So here you go. Those are the curved ones from the smaller diameter vase. And here is this vase here. That's what I had just done prior to this. And now here is the other petal from the larger diameter vase, and see how that's not as curved. It's flatter. So the diameter of the vase is what gives you your curve. So that was from the big one, the last one that I showed you. I actually had cut up a bunch of the curved and flatter pieces of glass. I didn't want to bore you with it. And after it was all cut up, I threw it in my Vavor tumbler, the curved pieces along with the other flatter pieces. And I just added a little bit of water to the tumbler so that it just covered the glass, a squirt of Dawn dish spray. And the Dawn dish spray, all that does is clean the glass. It doesn't have anything to do with taking the sharp edges off. Then I put it on the Vavor tumbler for 1 hour. Now, the tumblers always have speed settings, and they also have number of day settings. This one you can set up to 9 days, and up to 4 different speeds. And this would be used if you're tumbling glass to make faux sea glass. But we're only doing it to take the sharp edges off, so we only have to do it for 1 hour. The thinner the glass, the longer you have to do it. The thicker glass, within 1 hour, is ready to take off the tumbler. If it's real thin, it seems sharper, and sometimes you have to do it up to 2 hours. 1 hour, I dumped it into a colander, rinsed it off, and then dumped it out onto a drying mat. And now it is no longer sharp. You can run your finger across it, and there's no threat of cutting yourself. It's so easy to do. So here I'm wanting to make some stained glass stems for the irises. Now, I'm not an expert stained glass cutter by any means, but I did learn to cut stained glass just by watching YouTube channels, YouTube videos. So one thing about the stained glass, this is a textured stained glass. You want to put the textured side down. You don't want to cut on the textured side. Now these videos that you can watch to learn how to cut it are free, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of videos teaching you how to cut stained glass for free. And really, this cutting the stems is probably one of the easiest things to do. So the only thing that's hard about it is that it is very sharp. A number of ways you can get the sharp edges off. You can use like a sanding block and just go over all the edges real quick in the points. The other thing that I have is a stained glass grinder, which will sand the edges down real fast. I happen to have an MJR 35-pound tumbler that I'm going to be throwing them in. There's also a Bumblebee. It's a smaller tumbler that has a longer barrel that you might be interested in, and I'll leave a link under the description to that one. Ended up putting them in my large tumbler, and yes, some of them will break, some of them will stay long. You can piece them together. It's just what I chose to do this time. So I'm just throwing these stems in the 35-pound MJR tumbler. I am putting water to cover the top, and I am putting some grit in, and I don't know why I did that because you really don't need to put the grit in when you're tumbling it, just to get the sharp edges off. I'm just so used to doing it, I did it not even thinking. And then I just went ahead and tumbled it for a couple hours. I dumped it out, rinsed it off outside, and again, I don't know why I put the grit in there. I just wasn't thinking. And then I finished rinsing it off in the kitchen and dumped it out onto a mat to dry. You can see some of them did break and are shorter, but they will be fine for the project. Next, I took the pieces of glass for the iris. I took them out to the garage. I put them on some painter's tape so that when I sprayed them with the Tamiya translucent purple spray paint, they didn't fly all over the place, and it helped to hold them up a little bit. And then I just gave them, I want to say, 2 quick coats of the Tamiya purple, and it's a real pretty color spray paint, the purple translucent Tamiya. Now I'm going to put the flowers together. So each flower has 6 petals. I'm using the Diction UV lamp. The thing that's great about it is it does not need to be plugged in. It just, you have to make sure that it's charged, and you can use it together like that so that it will get whatever you're curing from the top and the bottom. It has the little drawer that pulls in and out, or the little tray, or you can use it separate. The top and the bottom both light up separately, and it goes up to 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. And here you can see neither of them needs to be plugged in. They just have to be charged before you use them, and they both work at the same time separately, so that it's a really nice UV light. So each flower consists of 6 petals, and the top 3 I'm just making a little bit shorter. And so the top 3 are the ones that lay a little bit flatter, the larger diameter vase that I used. And I'm going to fuse the 3 of these together using the UV resin. And what I do is I just put a little bit of UV resin on, put the UV light on it, and usually you only have to hold it on there for about 30 seconds. And then you can let go and leave the light on a little bit longer. And once the 3 of those are fused together, I put the other 3 on. And I lay these sideways. They kind of stand up on their own. And then the third one, I nip the pointed end off so that it will kind of stand up. I put some UV resin on, set it like that, and I have to hold it up when I put the UV light on it, and I hold it up for about 30 seconds. And then once it's standing on its own, I let go and leave the light on it longer. And then this is what it looks like with all 6 of the pieces holding together. And then I go ahead and do that and finish up. I make 3 of these flowers all together. Next, I take some crushed glass. This is Michael's ASHLAND decorative filler, and it's the reflective silver that I have painted with the Tamiya yellow translucent spray paint. And I take some UV resin, and right where all of the petals intersect, I take some of the yellow glass and just put that there. It kind of hides any imperfections. And then I also take some UV resin and kind of paint a stripe down the middle of the bottom, and then sprinkle some of the yellow glass on it. And then I put the UV light on it, and I continue to do the same thing on the other 2 rounded petals. And I do that for all 3 of the flowers. And then when all 3 of the flowers are done, I set them under the UV light so that the UV light gets it from the top and the bottom. And those are the 3 flowers done, almost done. I'm making 2 iris buds just by using the purple petal and part of the green leaf and attaching them together with the UV resin. And right there you can see the 2 sitting on the green mat. And now I'm attaching part of a green leaf to the bottom of the iris flower. And then this will be kind of like what the flower comes out of. I don't know how to explain it, but you can see the green piece right there that I'm adding with UV resin. And I put all of them on the little tray so that it can be hit from both, the UV rays can hit it from the bottom and the top. And then here they all are done. Aren't those cute? Oh, and then after I put the stems on, they're even prettier. I'm also going to be adding smaller flowers to this project, so I have to cut up some smaller petals. And again, I'm using this smaller diameter vase, but because the petals are real small, they will not be as curved because I'm using a shorter piece. And what I do is I just go around the perimeter and nip just like that, and cut a bunch of pieces about that size, and then I shape them all after. And then again, if you already know how to nip glass and how to shape them into petals, you can just fast forward through this part. So here's a, well, that one's no good. Here's a petal, and I'm just going to go ahead and do just like I did with the larger iris ones, but just make it into a smaller petal. I'm just nipping around the fatter part of the piece that I nipped off, and I'm leaving the other end pointy. Just like that. And I'm going to do a whole bunch of them just like that. Here you can see I nipped up a whole bunch of them, and I threw these in the tumbler just like I did the other ones. And then I took them out to the garage, put them on the painter's tape again so that they wouldn't fly away or turn over when I sprayed them. And I sprayed them with the Tamiya translucent yellow spray paint. And the thing that's great about the Tamiya spray paints, probably most spray paints, is they do not fade and they do not run when you pour resin over them. Though the Tamiyas come in very small bottles, they are highly concentrated. I went over this fast and did 2 coats. So now I have to assemble the flowers, and you can see the one flower already assembled to the right. That one I had made, I don't know, a while back, but I want to make them similar, looking similar like that, and they're 2-layer flowers. And for me, instead of trying to assemble it on the glass just before I pour the resin without any UV resin holding it together, it would be so tedious, it would drive me crazy. I like putting my flowers together ahead of time so that I can move them around on the project and decide exactly where I want to put them. All I'm doing is holding up the flowers so that the point is in the middle. And honestly, you can actually nip the point so that it's flatter and the flowers will stand up on their own. But I guess I wasn't thinking when I did it. So I just held them up, put them in the UV resin, put the UV light over it for about 30 seconds. And I just have them kind of holding together, and the UV light hasn't been on it for a real long time, but it's good enough. And then I put the UV light on it for about 3 minutes after I have the entire flower assembled. And this can be kind of tedious doing it, but it's so much easier doing it this way than trying to balance petals on a project without using UV resin. Then I just keep on assembling them until I end up with 5 flowers to put on the project. Next, I cut up this old vase to make some leaves. And it's really nice because it has a nice texture to it. And it is a pretty green, but remember when you put resin over glass, whatever color it is, it does come out lighter. It makes it more translucent. So again, if you know how to cut leaves or whatever, just go ahead and fast forward through it. I'm just going to do a couple slow. So I end up just nipping them into whatever shape you think a leaf might look like. And you know, leaves are all different shapes. So I made some large ones, I made some small ones, I made some leaves out of the vase, and I made some leaves out of the one bowl that I just put down there. And I did the same thing after I got finished cutting up these leaves. I also put these in the tumbler, covered them with water, used the Dawn dish soap, and you can see that this vase here is really filthy, and the good thing is you don't have to scrub it because the Dawn dish soap will take care of it. And again, if you already know how to do this, just fast forward through it. I was just going to do a couple before I fast forward. And this I end up nipping many more leaves than I'm going to need, and I'm just going to, after I tumble them and dry them, I'm going to put the extra ones in a baggie so that I can use them at another time. So for this last group of flowers, I use this Hobby Lobby glass. It comes in white, red, green, and maybe blue, and I just make teeny tiny piles of it all over this silicone mat, and then I take these little yellow beads and put them in the center, and then I take some UV resin and cover the flowers, and then I put the UV light on it. Then after all of them are set, I pop them up off of the silicone mat and set them on the tray with the UV light, the Diction one, and hit them from the top and the bottom to make sure they're fully cured. First thing I do is clean the mirror really well, and I use 99% isopropyl alcohol. I put my stained glass stems and leaves on for the irises, and then I put the irises on, and then I also have 2 buds. Next I have my yellow flowers, and for the centers of the yellow flowers I'm using these little half pearls. I believe I got them at Michael's. The stems of the yellow flowers I'm using something called vitrograph glass. Vitrograph glass is long strands of glass that I buy on Etsy. These I bought from J&L Glass, and that's really the only place that I've bought them from. But there are many other sites on Etsy that sell vitrograph glass. This place has just been really reliable, so I've kept with them. And then all of the leaves that I had cut and tumbled earlier, I put on the yellow flowers. And then the green glass that I put at the very bottom, it's kind of like 1/8 inch fire glass. It's actually glass from the Dollar Tree, and it was green. I did not color it. And then the little white flowers that we made with the yellow beads in the middle, I just kind of scattered those all around. I also took some purple and yellow ASHLAND decorative filler that I had colored myself with the Tamiya spray paints and sprinkled that down at the very bottom I sprinkled that on top of the green glass. And then I took a dust cover and placed it on top while I mixed up my resin. Now I'm ready to mix the resin. The resin I'm using for this project is the Diction High Gloss Epoxy Resin. It's a 1-to-1 ratio resin. This resin has no VOCs. I do warm both my resin and hardener in warm water for about 5 minutes before I mix them together. I find it makes it much thinner, much easier to work with, and fewer bubbles. This is a very nice low bubble resin. Actually, I don't think I saw any bubbles in it. It's important that you dry the bottoms of your cups so that no water gets into your resin. It could ruin the project. This particular resin you're supposed to mix for 5 to 6 minutes. And whenever I put resin on a project, I usually drizzle it over the glass first. Now the long stems are all a textured glass, so it's in your best interest, if you want the texture to be seen, not to drizzle the resin over it, but to swipe it over it with your finger. You can put it on it, but you kind of have to wipe it off or else you won't see the texture. And I think I may have put some of those stems on the wrong way. One side is textured and the other side is not. Then you'll see I'm drizzling the resin over the larger flowers, and I'm kind of picking the flowers up and rubbing the resin in just to make sure everything's covered and there's not just little drizzles over it. And that's what's so nice about having the flowers done ahead of time. You can actually pick the flowers up, make sure the resin is run under it, you know, move them around, reposition them without having to worry about the pieces of glass falling this way or that way. It just makes it so much easier. And you know, have a time limit when you put resin on. You have so many minutes to work on it before you can cause problems with the resin. This particular resin has 30 to 40 minutes work time. So here you can see me just using the little spatula, pushing the resin around, making sure it's in all the areas. I know they say it's self-leveling, but you have to push it up into the corners and around the edges, and to make sure that all the areas are covered. Use the kitchen torch to get rid of the bubbles. I use a toothpick to move the glass around. When I'm done with the project, I always come back every 15 minutes to check for glass placement to make sure nothing's moved. It's important that you have it on a flat, level surface. I may need to retorch when I come back or to reposition glass. I try to get down eye level and look at it. Sometimes you can see if there's sediment in it. For some reason, when I come back after 15 minutes, I always find a cat hair or something that's floated to the top, and get that out with a toothpick. And here I have 3 bumblebees and a little ladybug that I put on it. The ladybug I put on one of the leaves, and the bees I put up at the top in the resin. Diction High Gloss Resin is a very nice resin to work with. The work time is 30 to 40 minutes. You usually can touch it within 12 to 24 hours. It's a full cure after 2 days. It cures best in temperatures between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And like I said before, the work time is 30 to 40 minutes. It's in your best interest to read the directions for the resin that you are using, because all resins are different. And it's in your best interest to cover your project with a dust cover. Next day, after the resin had set up, I thought the yellow flowers were too plain, so I decided to use this Diction Glitter UV Colored Resin. And I just did the very top layer. I squeezed a little bit out of the bottle and brushed it on with a little paintbrush. And I actually ended up after I did them one time, I went over them a second time and did a second layer. And I know it's kind of difficult to tell from here, but it really does give it the top layer a little bit more of an amber look with a little bit of glitter in it, and it just gives it a little bit more color to the plain yellow. And for the bottom layer of petals, I took the Diction UV resin and mixed it with the Let's Resin Chameleon Flakes brown yellow. And I just dumped a whole bunch in and I painted that on all of the lower layers. Just think it gave them a little bit more interest instead of being the plain yellow. I just didn't like them like that. I ended up putting some of that on the beads also. And then of course I found a hair at the very top, so I took a little UV resin and another little bumblebee, stuck it on, put the UV light on it. Because it's on a mirror, it will reflect up on the back and it will set the UV resin. If it was on glass, you would put the UV light under the glass. If it was on a canvas, I would probably opt to use some type of glue. UV light cannot penetrate through the bumblebee. Hey everyone, another project done. This one took a little bit more time than most, but if you're just starting out, you don't have to do this big project. You could do just the lilies or just one lily. I actually have a project on wood with just a lily, and I just thought that those were too plain. That's why I added the other stuff at the end. But I don't know if you can tell or not. I can tell when I look at it. I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not, but it just adds just a little more detail and a little more color to the plain yellow flowers. And anyway, so all the products I use in this video are a bunch of Diction ones. And on their website now, they're anywhere from 15 to 26% off. And if you, I'll put a link in below, and if you use the link, and then I have a 10% discount code on top of the sales price for any of the, any of the Diction products that you would want to get. But anyway, this was a fun project, and of course I always end up with a hair or something in my project. And the best way, don't panic, the best way is try to figure out how to cover it up without having to re-resin the whole thing. I mean, sure, I could have sanded that little hair out of there, but then I would have had to clean it and then re-resin the whole project, because when you pour resin over resin, you can see where it stops and starts. So using UV resin and a little something, a butterfly or a bumblebee or another piece of glass or a flower, is a way to cover it up in using UV resin without having to redo the whole project. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, and you'll be notified every time I put a new video out. I put one out every week, sometimes 2 a week. I have the Facebook page going, all sorts of beautiful art being displayed. Come join us over there, and I hope you guys all have a great day. Thanks for watching.